Hi guys! I would love to paint a Monstera leaf with you with watercolor. So if you are a beginning watercolor artist, then this is going to be the perfect exercise for you. It's going to be fun and easy, and it will help you to get to know the medium. But also when you have more experience, this is also going to be a very fun and inspirational exercise. So grab your paint supplies and we can get started. So let's start with drawing a Monstera leaf, and we are using an HB pencil for this, working on our watercolor paper. And if you like to try it out first, you can of course use sketching paper or some cheaper printer paper, but for now I'm starting on my watercolor paper, and I am starting with a heart shape. This is the easiest way to draw a Monstera leaf. Just draw a heart, and then that's the perfect basis for us to really shape it into a beautiful Monstera leaf. So I always like to start at the bottom of the leaf, where it always has this beautiful point in the middle. It doesn't need to be perfectly symmetrical, but you want to have that point. And then I start at the right, and I'm just basically creating these pointy bits of the Monstera leaf, like smooth flowing. And I can imagine that I make it seem like it's super simple and that it might not be so easy for you. Then if you're struggling with this, try it out on your sketching paper first with like smooth lines. And if you need to, you can always use a soft eraser to erase the lines on your paper. Now, I think that the heart shape on the top, it was a bit too pointy, so I corrected that line. And now I am drawing a line from top to bottom, like the middle nerve of the leaf, and I like it to be have a double line, so it's going to be empty, well, not solid in the middle. So at this point we have our basic shape, and a Monstera leaf usually has some holes in it. And so I am randomly placing a few holes. You don't need to do this, or don't need the same amount. Just play around and do what you think looks nice. So I'm not really satisfied with how the hole at the top is looking. So erasing that one as well. So that goes for you as well. If you're not satisfied with anything, then just erase it and try to draw it again. So now that we have our basic sketch, I am using my soft eraser to erase the lines that I don't longer need, like those help lines from the heart shape that we drawn before. And then after that, I'm grabbing my kneading eraser and I'm rolling it over the entire sketch so that the pencil lines are less dark. They're going to be lighter, which is great for the end result, that you won't see those hard pencil lines in our watercolor end result. And now it's time for the fun part. We are going to paint this Monstera leaf. So grab your watercolor paint, and what I usually do is spray with my water bottle to activate the paint. And you best do this a few minutes before you start painting, so then truly the paint has been activated. So then I grab a round brush. Mostly I like to use size 6 or 8. And yes, I found a brush that I'm satisfied with. So make sure you've got some clean water as well and your paper towels. And we are going to wet our brush, and starting with sap green. I always mostly start with sap green when I paint leaves. It's my favorite basic color, green, and then when I want to have lighter or darker colors, I always drop in some other colors on the paper for it to blend in. So first, what I like to do is paint one half of the leaf, the left half, and I want to try and stay within those pencil lines. It's like a coloring sheet and I don't want to touch the pencil lines. So this way that when the art print is finished, we can erase those pencil lines, and once you have touched it with watercolor, you can't erase it anymore. And another reason why you want to paint with this technique is that when you are painting with different colors and areas that are touching each other, if you touch the paint, then the paint starts blending in each other, and that's something that you usually don't want to happen. Doesn't matter if it happens a few times, because it gives this really lovely and perfect watercolor effect, but it's something you would like to avoid. Now, because this leaf, everything mostly is going to be green, it doesn't really matter, but it's a technique that you would like to practice with so that in other projects you can use it. So I'm trying to paint this half as fast as I can so that the paint still is wet when I want to drop in some extra pigment and some extra colors. So if that doesn't work for you, if you paint slower than I do, then I suggest that you don't paint like half of the leaf, but perhaps only a quarter or just one or two pointy bits before adding in some extra pigment and color. Because as you see at this point, the top half of my leaf, the paint has already dried. It dried enough for the paint not to blend in as good anymore. And perhaps it has got something to do with the texture of this paper as well. I always love to try out different types of paper, and my favorite kinds have this effect of really blending in that paper, the watercolor in the paper very beautifully. Mostly that's a watercolor paper with a rough grain. So what I'm doing, I grab some darker green, and at some places I'm just adding it in and trying not to blend in the paper with my brush, blend in the color with my brush on the paper, because I don't want to overwork the paper. So I'm just gently touching the surface and using a bit of water to clean my brush and then brush out the color. And with a dry brush, you can lift off some of the excess water or color of your paper. So I just added aqua green. I really love to use several colors because this way your painting is becoming more interesting. It's not going to be too flat. And green absolutely is the basics of this beautiful Monstera leaf. But later on we're going to drop in some other colors as well to make it more playful. Because the paint has already dried, I need to brush out the paint a little bit with my brush, because otherwise it's going to dry with too harsh lines. And it doesn't really matter if that happens too much, but at some places I would like to avoid it a bit. So let me see. I'm thinking what other colors I'm going to drop in now. I'm thinking about a light blue. I really love the effect of this light turquoise blue color. And I'm just gently, loosely brushing it on top of the paint. I'm really being very playful at this moment, not thinking too much on what exact places I want to drop my color. It's a very nice and playful process. Also dropping in some yellow. So with this color palette, and of course it's also the subject, it's a tropical plant. But with these colors, I really feel like it's getting this tropical vibe. And now what I really love to do to make it extra interesting is drop in some pink as well. If you don't feel like doing this, you don't have to. It's your leaf, it's your painting. I'm just merely showing you possibilities of what you can do. And I hope that you feel like being creative and trying out new things. So what I did here also is spreading it out over the leaf. So at a few places in the leaf, adding that pink color to make it balanced. So at this point, I started at the other half of the Monstera leaf. So basically starting with the same sap green color, and I'm using a lot of water so that the paint is more diluted, and I'm giving it a very light wash. And doing the same thing, trying to stay within those pencil lines and just painting in those leaves. So I see at this point I'm using a little bit more pigment. That's okay. I really love the effect when I'm painting leaves that some parts are darker and other points are lighter. It makes the painting more interesting. So if you are a new watercolor artist, if you're a beginner, then this is a very nice exercise to practice with your brush and get to know your paper and your paint and see how it reacts. You can play with having a lot of water on your brush or less water, a lot of paint. And it's also about finding the balance. If you don't have enough water on your brush, then your brush stroke won't flow and you will get this weird texture. But if you have too much water and then you don't have enough color, your paper gets too wet and it gets all wobbly. And of course, you always need to make sure that you've got the right watercolor paper. And of course, there are all kinds of qualities and brands out there. And I think the most important is that you try out different kinds and see what works best for you. It doesn't necessarily need to be the most expensive paper, but there's just one thing that you need to pay attention to, and that is the weight of the paper. It needs to be at least 140 pounds because otherwise it is not heavy enough for the paper to be able to contain so much water. And if you paint with a lot of water, then you even need some thicker paper. But I suggest that you try to work with less water. I am someone who can work with a lot of water, and my paper can get wobbly from time to time. So the way that I do to try and fix that is to use either my brush or a paper towel or even a Q-tip to gently lift off that water off my paper. In the bottom of this leaf, you already can see like a few big piles of watercolor and water on the leaf. So it's going to take a while for the paper to dry and be able to absorb all that. So I am going to help it a bit So when I'm finished with dropping in my colors, I'm going to remove a bit of that water. So as you can see, after I started with my sap green, I added some darker green and some aqua green. And I'm basically seeing at this point that I'm making this half of the leaf darker than the other side. So I'm thinking I might do something about that soon. Of course, I still need to drop in my light blue and my yellow and my pink on this side. And also, when the paint dries, it can end up a bit lighter than what you see now. But I think I might add some darker green on the left side of the leaf as well. And again, you see that I am painting a very loosely and a very playful. Adding the pink as well. And I am really feeling like there is way too much water on my paper here. So if you can do so, then learn from this and try not to use as much water as I'm doing right now. And so I think I first am going to add a bit darker green. I'm using aqua green on this side of the leaf to even it out a bit. Yes, I think this looks better. But we are going to see how this turns out when the paint has dried. And with all the colors and the amount of water that we have been using in this leaf right now, you know that the paint is going to dry up really interesting with some nice watercolor blooms and harsh lines probably. So now with a dry brush, I am gently lifting off some of the water because at some places there really is way too much. So I'm not trying to brush too much into the paper. So I'm gently holding my brush on top of the paint. And you just see how the paint gets sucked up by the brush. Of course, it depends on the type and quality of your brush, how well this works. If it doesn't work so well for you, then you can use like the point of a clean paper towel or a Q-tip. So I think at this point we can let this dry. So the paint has dried really beautiful and you see some nice watercolor blooms and harsh lines and all the beautiful different colors. So I'm really very happy with the result already. But now I want to add some more details to this leaf. And for this, I'm using a very small brush, a round brush size 1. And I am using a really dark green to add those details. We are going to paint stripes on top of this beautiful leaf. So make sure that you have enough paint on your brush and enough water as well so that you can create nice flowing lines. So I see that I already overestimated, or I must say underestimated this brush. It is really small and it was able to contain way more water and paint than I could have imagined. So this pointy edge of the stripe is already very thick and I don't like that. So I'm first cleaning my brush and then grabbing some water and then I'm gently brushing alongside that line that I just painted. And basically this way I am brushing it out, making the line that I just put there, it's going to be thinner. And I am liking this way better. So putting more paint on my brush as well, and I'm going to give this another go. I hope that I'm able to make a more gentle line at this moment. Still, there is so much paint on this brush. I don't know if I need a smaller one or one that can contain a lot less water. I'm just going to do the same thing. I cleaned my brush and I grabbed some water, and then on the below side of the line, I am just brushing it out a bit, making that line a bit smoother. Even adding a bit paint in there as well, some more diluted paint, so that this line it's getting more blended in with the background of the leaf. So basically this process, we are going to repeat it for all the pointy bits of this leaf. So I'm speeding up the video a bit for now, and if you feel like it's going too fast, you can pause the video or look back just a bit. So now with the same color and the same small brush, I also like to draw the lines alongside the inside vein of the leaf. So on the left side and on the right side. And if my line is getting too thick, I will do the same thing as with the other lines, using some water on my brush and brushing it out. And what I also like to do is round this line a bit to make it look, well, like it's flowing more to the other veins of the leaf. So doing the other side as well. Using some water, brushing it out again. And I think it's looking really cool already. This leaf is really coming together very beautifully. I hope you are also satisfied with how your leaf is getting along at this point. So I'm also drawing these lines on the inside of those holes, very gently, very thin lines with the same dark green color. Now I would still like to add even more details. So with the same small brush, I am drawing thin lines like this towards the lines that we painted before. And I am really making sure that I am using up all of the paint on my brush. So I'm also painting these really light lines, and the lines that I think are too dark, I'm brushing them out a bit with some water. And it's okay if the lines get smudged away at some places. This doesn't need to be like symmetrical. It doesn't need to look perfect. I want to have it look a bit imperfect actually, like out of balance. So at some places you would like to have some thicker lines and some thinner lines at other places. So I'm going to speed it up a bit for now. Just have a look at what I'm doing, and if you need to, pause the video or rewind to watch back. So looks like that we are finished. We finished our beautiful Monstera leaf, and I hope that you are satisfied with your result. Please share it with me on your social media and subscribe to my channel to see more of my content. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hope to see you in the next video.